without further ado, I'd like to bring my panel up. I want to just point out Sean Wells' shoes, right? Like, you guys can tell, like, I'm a shoe guy, like, I dig shoes, but man, I really got to up my game. Those are.
I have about 100 pairs of Jordans. I have a weakness for shoes.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay, so this is what I'd like to start on the very far end with Vanessa, and I want you to just give a brief introduction about who you are, how you got to keto, and then we'll move it down from there.
So I'm Vanessa Spina. I'm also known as a ketogenic girl on Instagram, and I host a podcast called Fast Keto. And I found my way into the keto space about 5 years ago. I started my blog, and I initially came mostly to keto for autoimmune reactions and flares that I had, and also for fat loss and weight loss. And that's really been my focus in it, and just blogging and sharing as much as I can. I went back to school this past year to study biochemistry, to understand the science of all of this and why it's so incredible and so effective and amazing, so that I can communicate that more to my audience as well. So that's my story.
Thank you. All right, Jessica?
Hey, I'm Jessica Reynolds, also known as Coach Jessica on Facebook and Instagram. And I've been keto for a little over 3.5 years. 4 years ago, I kind of thought my life was over. I had struggled with eating disorders since age 11. I found keto at age 41, and it was like a miracle for me. I also had struggled with depression and anxiety and took about 17 pills a day for that. And I'm off those, and I'm in recovery from my eating disorder for 3.5 years. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Jade?
Hi, I'm Jade, and on Instagram, I'm the train inside me. I started my ketogenic journey about 3.5 years ago. I'd been diagnosed at 8 with epilepsy, and I was struggling about 4 years before keto on a lot of different medications. And today I am, well, actually starting next week, I will be on one med only, and it has taken me almost 3 years to pull that off. So that's how keto came into my life, and I spend time now educating others about brain health.
Liv?
Hi, I am Liz Williams. On Instagram, I'm the Fit Trainer's wife. My husband and I run a gym up in Evanston, Wyoming called 7K Fit, and we both live a ketogenic lifestyle. And I do it because I can cook really good food and still maintain weight. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Sean?
Hey, at Zone Halo, I think you guys probably just heard me. I don't know if I need to. Is there new people you think here?
Yes, I saw.
Anyway, so I got really into my story that was very difficult to talk about, where I've been suicidal, depressed, obese, autoimmune issues, Hashimoto's, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Epstein-Barr, and then a brain tumor. And I've been keto for 20 years and really focused for about 8 years. And it's made all the difference. And I'm on Instagram at Zone Halo. And that's my story.
Kevin?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I sustained a severe traumatic brain injury 8 years ago. While I was in a coma, my mother was told I had less than a 10% chance of ever regaining consciousness beyond a persistent vegetative state. I didn't eat, walk, or talk for months. My left hand was totally flexed inward. I was breathing through a tube, eating through a tube. And look, keto didn't fix me, but a lot went into my recovery. And at one point, I was steered towards a nutritional protocol, and I began to regain some clarity. And I was like, whoa, I've been in a brain fog for a long time. What happened? Why did nutrition make such a big difference? And what else could I do to give myself the best shot to recover? So I did what most people do when they're put in a debilitating situation and their whole life is flipped upside down, and you study like your life depends on it. Can anyone relate? Yeah? Yeah. Yes. So I'm the author of How to Feed a Brain, Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. Feed a Brain on all the social medias. I also have the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. While I was like this, breathing through tubes, eating through tubes, not very fun. And I was like, this is an adventure, switch my perspective. So Adventures in Brain Injury podcast, where I get to interview a lot of these awesome people.
Thank you. This is our panel. So I want to invite everyone who wants to ask a question. Please do.
Hi, my husband and I started the ketogenic lifestyle about a year ago. But I have a question for you because he struggles with alcohol addiction. And does anybody have suggestions on how to help him with that? Besides AA, right? And besides going cold turkey, because that's really difficult for him. So any suggestions you all might have, I would love to hear them.
So I want to make sure that I'm framing your question correctly.
Okay.
You want to know how to help your husband with alcohol addiction aside from the actual organization designated to help with alcohol addiction, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Because he's not going to go to AA.
Okay, understood.
And also, how does the ketogenic diet fit into that, or the lifestyle fit into all of that,
Okay,
and how can it help?
who's got the, okay.
Okay, so I coach people mostly with eating disorders. And what I found is most people have co-addictions. Oftentimes, as we are digging into the reasons why they repeat the cycles of disordered eating, it comes out that it's tied to alcohol, or it's tied to some other addiction, or they used to be an alcoholic, or they're in recovery from alcoholism and now they are using food. So if you can tackle the reason why they repeat cycles of self-harm, because that's really what it is, then you get free of both. And that I've seen that happen so many times, when you stop for a second and you actually think, what is the lie that I believe that keeps me doing this behavior? That's really the sort of thing that I do with clients, and we've had just tons and tons of success with co-addictions. And again, it a lot of times comes out as a co-addiction, and that may be true with him too, since you guys are doing keto.
So how does PTSD play into that, do you think? Because he had a very traumatic childhood.
I wanted to hop in with as far as addiction go, I work with clients as well, and I work in neurology in general, working with neurologists and neuroplasticity. That's what we do, right? And the bottom line is, what we practice, we get really good at. So if we practice our addictions, we get good at being addicted. And, foods are addictive. So getting off of the carbs, the sugar. Sugar is more addictive than cocaine, So moving away from addictions in general is a practice in, I don't really want to say willpower, but habit formation. It's changing habits. And also, there is biochemistry involved in it. So I often use a supplement called DL-phenylalanine, which is a dopaminergic natural compound. So getting that, you can find it on Amazon, like in powders, and that's an awesome tool to use when weaning in. It's It's a peptide that is pretty gentle. So that would be my recommendation on that.
Just one more thing. I just want to agree. There is a brain element there. I went to therapy from 16 till now, and therapy alone did not work for me. And keto, it wasn't keto that saved me all by itself, but for the first time, I could think clearly enough to make the therapy work. Before, I never could understand why I kept doing the thing that I hated so much. And once my brain was clear and it's powered by ketones instead of carbs, it's like I could all the therapists that I ever had, it was like they had held hands, and it all made sense. So I think that's part of it. And post-traumatic stress, I see that from a different angle. I had electric shock therapy because my depression was was suicidal. Ideation was so bad, and I literally lost chunks of memory and couldn't drive a car for 5 years. So I have some, not at the same extent, of course, as someone who's seen war, but I understand that too, and that is so much better. So just want to encourage you, there's hope.
Anyone else? So okay, go ahead.
I just want to say that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And that's why AA works, because you connect.
So that's what I was going to say is I've done a lot of research on addiction, and a lot of theories that seem to be fleshing out correctly is that addiction is a result of a sense of disconnect, right? It's an attempt to relate, a failed attempt to relate, and this is the consequence, or this is the closest thing they can find. Now, in relationship to PTSD, it's a sense of numbing, right? There's a reason why folks who suffer from PTSD are also very high in the alcohol consumption range. What alcohol does into your brain, it prevents you from entering REM sleep. REM sleep is where you do all the dreams. That's where all the nasty stuff happens, and you don't know if it's real or not. That's where all the nightmares take place. So when you drink a lot, you don't dream, which means you don't get good sleep, but you also don't have to suffer through that. You're just unconscious, and you don't have to deal with rehashing all that stuff. So getting to the underlying cause, figuring out why there's no connection there is key. Where does keto fall into all of this? It, like Jessica's saying, it allows for a cleaner slate, a clearer window in order for him to see that. But I want you to understand something. You can't do anything. And you are wearing this way too heavy. I realize this is your husband. This is the person that you've tied yourself to. You can do nothing. He has to. If he doesn't want to, all you can do is just be there and be ready for when he says he's ready.
Brian?
Great answer.
One more.
And that, what Brian just said is right. It's when you live with an alcoholic, the only thing you can do is take care of yourself and lead by example. And I know my husband probably wouldn't mind me saying, but he's been in sobriety for 15 years, and you have to just be there. You can't walk that road with them. You can just be there to support them and lead by example. And if he does choose a ketogenic diet, it will clean it up, like Jessica just said, and you'll be able to think more clearly, because the problem really isn't the alcohol per se, it's something deeper. And that it's really scary to look at that stuff, and that might be why. So there we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Next question.
Hi, my question is about cancer.
I'm sorry, your question is what?
About cancer.
Cancer.
Yes.
Everyone's favorite topic. Go on.
I have heard that most cancers thrive on sugar, but not all. And my brother has oral cancer. Would that be something that would benefit from keto?
All cancer is going to benefit from
Okay.
keto. There are some that are estrogen driven, like maybe about 10% of cancers. But it's always going to help because of what I was talking about before with mitochondrial function and reducing glycation, inflammation, oxidation. And then certainly when you're in the metabolic model of cancer, then elevated blood glucose is going to propagate more cancer. So yes, I mean, in either case, it's going to be helpful. Like I think people try and confuse you and throw up, smoke and say, oh, there's breast cancer, this isn't. I get it, but keto is always going to be helpful, always.
So can I just, the reason that you hear some people say, well, some cancers and some, it's because they're trying to hedge their bets, or because they are an oncologist and they don't want to get their license pulled or whatever. I will tell you, all cancers need sugar, period. You take the sugar away, the cancer cannot feed. Now they will find other ways to feed, but if it's ketone based, it's not going to survive, right? So all cancers are going to shrink if you take the sugar away. So even if it didn't, what could it hurt, right? I mean, just changing his diet is going to get healthy anyway. It's going to give him a better platform to fight the cancer from.
Well, and let me flip this too. Like when, sugar, high bliss point food, like we were just talking about with alcohol addiction and all these things. I mean, we're stuck on the standard American diet is what's called like high bliss point food, engineered foods that are triggering dopamine and serotonin, and we're overriding satiety signals, and we're just like flooding our body with garbage. And certainly we need to be on low sugar, hopefully ketogenic diets, but also like whole food diets and getting rid of some of these high bliss point foods, these manipulative foods that might have glyphosate, might have GMOs, antibiotics, RBGH, RBST, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, artificial colors, on and on and on. So whole food diet, keto, paleo, whatever, and mitochondrial health.
Anyone else? I get questions from people all the time asking, and like, what could it hurt, right? What could it possibly hurt? Go ahead.
And
Second question.
I'm also interested in your example of the patient that you had with the 6 weeks left to live, what her survival status was.
She did recently pass away, but
How long
that
was
was, she had 2 years instead of 6 weeks. And the problem was, you guys ready? I don't know how many of you heard it before, but this was a patient that came to me with 6 weeks to live, taken off of chemo and radiation, stage 4 glioblastoma multiforme. I put her on hyperbaric oxygen chamber therapy, IV vitamin C, keto, paleo, mitochondrial health supplements, all the stuff. And 6 weeks later, 90%, 80 to 90% reduction in her tumor on nothing, no chemo, no radiation. Which was profound to me. But as far as like, I can give you the protocol, and I mean, the survival rate is extremely poor, and no one is talking about any of these things, about keto, about paleo, about they're just shoving, the chemo drugs, like they get fast tracked through the FDA, and they're just poison, and they don't even get reviewed. And so a lot of times I really feel like in cancer, people are dying from the chemo. I mean, it's crazy. Like we need like a complete reset of standard of care. And like he said, doctors are scared to even make decisions now. No one told her about keto. I mean, she did get, a couple extra years, and I'm proud of that. Like, that's a big deal. I mean, that's time that she could spend with her friends, her family, like have spiritual time. Like that's more life lived, So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
I'm still fairly new to keto. I just started like 2 weeks ago. So my question is, what is your advice to someone like me who's new and still struggling to keep it going? And then my other question is, how do you implement it at home with kids and family?
I'd like Liz to answer this one.
So I was keto by myself for a long time, and I had to kind of lead by example. And then my husband joined, and I have a 4-year-old daughter who eats what we eat. I feel like what I'm in charge of bringing what food we do eat. I'm in charge of the cooking, and so she's such a great little eater because of what I give her and how she feels, and I make sure that when we do use fruit or something that she has an activity beforehand, and then she knows that she can have that. And I just think by leading by example is key with being at home. And then as far as just starting keto, I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the information, especially after a weekend like this where there's so much science base. For me, sometimes that's even overwhelming, but I just think sticking to the basics and just taking it a day at a time, and just you're still very new, so you still probably don't feel very good. And so just being patient and giving it a solid 6 weeks at least, and go from there. But I think just sticking with it and not getting too overwhelmed with, you can read anything on the internet. There's always, you're doing the wrong thing or the right thing. Just trust in what you're doing, listen to your body, and be patient. It really will be worth it once you make it through this, this hurdle. So.
Vanessa?
That's such a great question, and there are so many new people coming to keto, all the time. I think it's really beneficial to find someone that you really like their style, their attitude, their approach, and maybe if they have a cookbook or something that you can, sort of just focus on one that you like instead of getting all of them, because there's there's so many. Just focus on one at a time and just do one thing at a time. I would say the most important thing that we see in science is that it's the reduction and control of the carbs and the starches that really is the biggest lever when it comes to getting into ketogenesis and getting into that ketogenic state. So if you are just focusing on limiting the carbs and limiting the processed carbs, especially the grains and the sugar, that you're probably going to do great, and just take one thing at a time.
I help people who have any eating disorders, but lots of people also come to me who are just getting started. And the best advice that I ever can give is keep it really simple. That's piggybacking on what she said. I lost 135 pounds and I never counted macros, ever. And again, people who are just getting going, a lot of times they get overwhelmed by the calculating. And the reality is, if you cut your carbs and then you adjust as you go, if you're getting results, great. You may need to adjust fat and protein down the road. If you're not hungry enough, you're probably not eating enough fat. Electrolytes are a huge, huge deal here in the beginning. So keep it simple. Don't let it become this huge thing, especially for people that have many, many years of food obsession. That was part of my healing, the fact that I didn't have to count for the first time in my life. And so I eat intuitively, and I generally teach my clients to do that too. And then as far as keto at home, I do have a ketogenic family. My older daughter in her 20s, my husband, and then my youngest daughter who's 11. We're all keto, but I did start it alone. I had to be an example for my husband to decide to go all in, and he did. But then our youngest daughter has epilepsy, and it was a really tough decision to say to a 9-year-old, we're taking away all the sugar. And I mean, by that point, she was addicted. She had seen poor eating habits from us. But it came down to a decision of, I can't know there's something that could help her and not try it. And bottom line, she does it. She's 3 years keto. And she eats what you buy. Yes, there's some difficulty. You may choose to go lower carb with them and then kind of transition, start to add fats and things like that. That's what we did. But at the end of the day, I think of it like this. It might be hard for her now to eat something different than her friends, but it's going to be harder on her in her 20s and 30s to have diabetes or obesity or something like that. So I'd rather hold her hand through that, through the pain of change now, than hold her hand through the pain of disease later in her life.
Anyone else?
All right, we're keeping it super simple. So, wait, don't go.
He needs eye contact.
If we're keeping it real simple, number one, electrolytes like Himalayan sea salt in your water. Like, boom, there you go. And get rid of all the stuff in your pantry. And there you go. That's a great start.
So I just want to add one more thing, because we really don't want you to walk back to your chair. That's really know your why. You have to establish why you're doing this and keep coming back to that every single day until you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? Until it becomes routine, until it becomes built into your DNA, you have to keep coming back to your why. Why did you start this? And if your why is not keeping you there, you have the wrong why.
And Hannah had a great thing. Ask why, and then ask why on that why, and then ask why on that why, and then ask why on that why, and you'll get really down to why.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Now you may go to your seat. Next question, please.
Hi. So I have been following keto for about 5 years, and I've had a ton of success. I've healed a lot of chronic lifelong illnesses, and I lost more than 100 pounds that I've maintained for several years.
Yeah.
Thank you. But with that being said, with all the success, and once I lost the weight, I felt really good. And then I hit a wall, maybe about a year and a half ago, where the weight stayed off, but I started feeling like more fatigued, and I was having other health issues come back, like the headaches. So even though I lost the weight, I just started feeling bad. And so I've been working with several doctors to try to figure out why, and I've followed several elimination diets that were very strict for several months, and they were difficult to follow. And I found, so I figured out the root cause is mold toxicity that I never was able to detox from. And so I'm still working through that, but I find every time I try an elimination diet and then I try to add back food in, I get really bad headaches and I react strongly. So I know, Vanessa, you talk about carnivore diet, and I have been considering the carnivore diet as like a better elimination diet, but I'm scared because I don't really want to be carnivore for life, and I'm scared if I take out all my food.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you just said. I mean, I understand every word in its singularity, but when you strung them together in that sentence, I didn't get it.
I love dark chocolate fat bombs. Dark chocolate.
Well, I'm with you on that, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I don't necessarily want to get stuck where I can only eat meat, because if I continue to remove foods, I'm scared I'm going to keep reacting to them as I add them back in. So do you think going to a carnivore diet for like a month would help me, or might it bring up more intolerances?
Anyone want to start with this?
It sounded like you answered your question.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes, it sounds like it's where, I mean, biohacking is like self-experimentation, the quantified self, like you are the best judge of this. So like, that's a great way to eliminate things. So that's a good place to start. I mean, try that. I mean, you could also, I don't know if like vegan worked for you, but like whatever way you could start there, like start with your carnivore nose to tail, and then maybe, start adding in things slowly. But the fact is, I understand like it's hard to have an eliminated diet, but it's also hard to live with fatigue, right? So which matters more?
And that's not I'm not worried about doing the carnivore for like a month or two, but it worries me when I start to add food back in, because now I'm on such a restricted diet because I can't add back in the dairy, I can't add back in
So let me make sure I understand your question. You're afraid that if you eliminate down to only meat, you can never add anything back in
without
at all.
reacting.
Okay, so it's a fear of that. So I just want to, I think...
That's kind of reinforcing though, right? I mean, mentally.
I should only eat meat.
No, that like you actually have anxiety about foods being added back in, which is going to trigger, I mean, that's going to trigger your immune system.
Jake.
Okay.
The question would be is when you're adding it back in, how much are you adding? Because maybe you can have these things, but the extent of how much you were eating before versus if you added it in and maybe had it once a week versus every single day. Because what I hear is food sensitivity. And when we have food sensitivities and we eat too much of one food, it causes problems. But sometimes we can have a small amount. So that's where it becomes the N=1, where you have to test out which foods, when you do incorporate them back in, how much can your body tolerate till you feel more fatigued or feel bloated or your skin itches, or what are the things that sets it off? And only start with one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. You want to add to it? Yeah, go ahead.
Those are really great answers, and I was just going to add on to that. With food eliminations, most people do the reintroductions wrong, and they just add everything back in at the same time. But if you're testing one thing, so you're testing nightshades, you have a slice, and then you wait a day, and then you have another slice, and then you wait 3 days, and you take sort of a week for each one, because or else it's too many confounding variables. With the carnivore thing, I think there are some questions that people have about the gut microbiome shifting, because the microbiome digests a lot of our food. But according to Dr. Paul Mason, your gut microbiome completely shifts if you go to carnivore. And so some people might have issues then when they reintroduce foods, but the microbiome will shift again. There's just going to be an adjustment period between those times. So,
Liz, you have anything to add? No? You good? So just one other thing I want to add to this is you said you're still working through the mold toxicity thing. Mm-hmm. So if that is in fact an underlying confounding variable, that's going to screw things up to begin with. Like you can't solve the other stuff until you get that taken care of first, because it sounds like it was all tied together, So maybe you go carnivore until you get the mold thing figured out, and then you can start reintroducing things safely.
Okay,
And they found mold toxicity, but that there might be multiple etiologies.
Right.
I mean, how do you know that's the only thing?
It's not.
I mean,
know
there could be
it's not.
other things going on with you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, guys.
Sarah.
Howdy.
Hi. Okay, so please excuse my foul language, but I hate to swear, but I want to talk about the C word, carbs.
Oh.
Okay, so this is my concern, and before I get like avocados thrown at my head, I am a keto coach, so I am a fan of keto, so please know that when I bring this question up. I've been being in the keto community for like the last 4 years. I guess the thing that concerns me the most is, you guys were talking about addictions, and I loved your answer about like you take away one addiction and you replace it for another, right? And my concern is that I see this phobia of carbs and this mentality of, well, if I eat one carb, I'll eat all the carbs. So in fear, I'm just going to stay super strict and run away from all the carbs. And I'm not saying that for a lot of us, we do need to avoid the carbs, right? If you're using keto therapeutically for all sorts of reasons, there's a sensible reason to stay away from carbohydrates for a lot of people. But there's a lot of other people that I don't see that is the case. I don't see it coming from a place of abundance and love, and I can have carbs, but I choose these. It comes from more of a place of fear of, I will get fat. If I eat one carb, I'll spin out of control, and I'll just start going on these crazy binges, and so out of fear, I'm gonna avoid carbohydrates. And I just wanted to know if you guys are sensing that, if you're feeling that, what your thoughts are in your heart about this kind of carb phobia.
Yes, I totally agree. Because like in my presentation, I talked about that I do targeted and cyclical, and if I'm, like I said, like in New York City and there's like the best pasta in the world, it's like won awards, or if I'm at somebody's wedding and the cake's really good, like, I mean, I don't need, if this is a lifestyle, if this is your life, then you have to live your life. Like, this is an 8 to 12 weeks crash diet. It's okay to have some carbs. There's just no deficiency of carbs. I just view carbs as a tool. And then it's like, what carbs and how and when and how much, it's like, it's okay. It's okay to have some carbs. And it's also good to understand metabolic flexibility and be dual fuel. It's okay. Like, if we were to go back to paleo times or whatever, they weren't eating ketogenic unless they were like, as we define it with these macronutrient ratios. But I bet, like, maybe Eskimos. But like, if we were to look at whether they were in ketosis, probably 50% of the time they were in ketosis because they were glycogen depleting, they were like working hard to get their food and hunting, they were eating resistant starches, they were eating low glycemic fibrous foods. Like, if you were to eat a green banana, that has no glycemic impact.
It's
if you were to
terrible,
eat,
though. It's terrible. Why would
okay, but like berries, whatever, like a raw potato, like things like that are like resistant starches. Like, they weren't always eating like, again, these processed foods, high bliss point foods. Everything wasn't to the height of ripeness. There wasn't sodas, so we were in ketosis a lot. There wasn't this hack of like high fat, like whatever. Like, we don't need to be afraid of carbs. I think you just need to earn your carbs, know where the place is for carbs, and focus on how you feel. I mean, for some people it's zero carb. For some people they can do targeted cyclical. It just varies. But we shouldn't tell other people you're doing it wrong, or make them afraid, or criticize them. We're all on a journey together. We need to support each other.
Jessica?
Okay. So I think the problem is that when someone has advice, they're really coming from the place that they come from. So for me, personally, I cannot eat one potato. I cannot eat sugar. I cannot, because for 31 years, I believed the lie that I could, and it always started a spiral. So I am not about fear. I actually have tattooed on my body, "Fear is a liar." I choose a clean ketogenic journey because for me, there was no hope. So to discover there's a way for me to get well when I thought I was just cursed with sickness forever, sobriety for me is like, oh, thank God. And so a lot of the people I work with are that way. But there are people who are not like me, and I think that's the big thing. The last thing that he said was, we need to understand that there is something going on. There's different communities of people who operate outside of our perspective because we've never lived there. So, like, I obviously represent the the addiction community, but I do understand that not everybody is like me, and the problem is that we need to be a community and say, stop saying, you must do this because I do this. Totally. Say, that works for you, but it doesn't work for me. That's the way to do it.
Awesome.
Kevin?
Yeah, I really appreciate what Sean was saying earlier about the like psychosomatic aspect of things. Telling yourself that you're gonna have problems, you're gonna have problems, you know? And if you're in my book, I say, this is not supposed to be completely, entirely restrictive. This is about the healthiest thing you can do for your brain, body, and soul is to enjoy your life and to do so sustainably. And on top of that, this wasn't in my book, drop it. Well, no, I'm gonna add one more thing before I drop it. The other thing, do it with the people you care about. Enjoy your life, do so sustainably, and do so with each other.
One more word. For those of us who are addicted and we have found food sobriety as our savior, I no longer need that to enjoy life. Like, my life's amazing. I'm like a new person. So for some people, it's recognizing that you don't need those things for your life to be enjoyable.
Vanessa?
I think it's really important to differentiate between different kinds of carbs. That's maybe the one thing we didn't talk about, is just there's the highly processed ones. Just like with fats, there's highly processed fats, and highly processed carbs are just not going to be good for most people. Like, we can say that, whereas there are different kinds that are, lower starch. Those are the ones we focus on more on keto, the higher density ones that are lower in carb, lower starch. So I think that's part of the discussion as well.
Liz, you have anything? Liz is like, I have nothing to add to that. So to address that, same thing, just to echo a lot of what is said up here. There are groups inside the keto community, and many of you may be familiar with them. There are several of them who insist the way that I do it is the way everyone should do it, regardless. And all that does is dilute the community itself, right? To understand that there's a spectrum, and we're all on that spectrum in some way, shape, or form. And you got to be able to support each other. So if Sean says to me, yeah, I'm keto, but I had the best pasta in New York, I had to have it, I'm not going to be like, unfriend, unfollow, I just can't deal with you. Like, I'd be like, okay, I don't care that you ate that, just answer my question, right? So like, it doesn't matter. We have to understand everyone's on this journey, and everyone's got to take their own backpack with them, right? So we're just here to support each other. Now, we'll offer one caveat to that. If you know someone who constantly is telling you they're struggling, and they keep telling you that they're eating like crap, but they're totally keto, call them on their crap. Because you're doing them a favor by saying, all of your problems are going back to the fact that you're lying to yourself. Was it Feinstein, Richard Feinstein, that said that ourselves are our easiest person to convince that we're lying to, or something like, I can't remember the exact wording, but we can lie to ourselves. It's easier to convince ourselves of what the lie is, right? When you have someone else pointing that out to you, it's a lot harder for you to get through it. So, I mean, the fear of carbs, I'm not afraid of them. I just don't eat them. Like, it's not like, I've had people tell me that. Like, the low-fat craze that took place for like 60 years, that was insane. Like, people would throw things away, like throw things away from them. Get away from me, because it had fat in it. And it's ridiculous to think otherwise. So why would we take just one of that and transport it on? You need carbs. You don't necessarily need dietary carbs. Just be smart about it and do what's best for you. We talked about the N equals 1. You need the N equals 1 amazing person. That's what that should be. So experiment with yourself. Find out where your thresholds are. You guys have seen Danny. Danny can throw down 50 grams of carbs a day, 100 grams of carbs a day, and it doesn't impact him in the short term. In the long term, it does. He'll tell you that. But in the short term, he can do that. He's pretty metabolically flexible. I would not be able to survive, to thrive on that. But I know that because I've experimented with it. Do it for yourself. So that's all we got to say, I think. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name's Candy, and I've been keto almost 2 years, and probably a year before that, just low carb. Last December, I was diagnosed with essential tremors, and I'm really frustrated because I thought this was a great neurological healing diet, and I wondered if anybody had any inside track to that that would help me. It's most noticeable in the mornings, especially if I have not eaten. And okay, go ahead. I see
So
you're jumping.
I won't necessarily be able to speak to the tremors per se, but I just want to address what you said, that you thought keto was supposed to be to address this sort of thing.
Right.
It's not 100% cure-all, right? So keto gets you. I know. Dang it! I was
I'm
sold a
looking
false
for
bill of goods. What keto does is it gets you 80% of the way there, right? It gives you a clearer window into what the actual problem is. Did anyone hear? I think it was Dr. Berry's presentation about thyroid, talking about. No, it was. I don't remember whose it was. Anyway, it's saying that by going keto, you clear out the mess so that you realize. Yeah, your numbers may drop on your thyroid, but that's telling you where it actually is. There's no more noise in that signal, right? So when you're talking about that, being keto is a starting point. Now you can actually get an understanding of what the neurological problem is, because there could actually be a physical malformation. I don't care how strict keto you are, you can't fix an actual biological problem, an actual mechanical problem inside your brain. So that may be part of the problem, but I want to turn it over to anyone else.
What are your ketones like? What does that look like? And what does your diet look like? Just curious.
They measured my ketone yesterday. It was 1.9. I try to stay under 20 net carbs, and I think in 2 years I've had like 3 cheats. I am a sugar addict, so if I have one, I'm a mess because I don't stop there. So I know I'm addicted and I can't do that, so I don't.
What is your basal glucose?
Oh, it was like 72. I'm insulin resistant, so my sugars always look great. My insulin just recently was 10.7.
And did you take that number in the morning when you first rose? Because you said your tremors are in the morning, correct?
Yes.
And that was...
Well, I mean, they're there, but they're worse if I'm upset, if I'm hurrying, if I'm hungry, if I, whatever.
So I don't think, I'll just talk because I talk about a lot of self-care too, and my stuff is neurological. We can do all we can do with our diet, right? But then there comes this point where we have to tap deeper into ourselves and look at our self-care. How we handle our stress, whether we're meditating, how we're truly grounded to the earth, how the things that affect us. And if you're noticing your tremors are more present when you're stressed, that would be pretty common with central nervous system. I know that for me, when my seizure activity, if I feel it, it's always more during stress. So finding ways to keep your stress down may eliminate that more than changing anything specifically in your diet, I'd say. I'd work more on that self-care piece than anything else. Because to me, just hearing what you're saying, your numbers sound pretty good, but the other question would be is you are eating keto, but what specifically are you eating? Maybe if you're eating any sweeteners, you need to remove those, because that is immediately the first thing I tell anybody and immediately the first thing I do for myself when I don't feel good.
Yeah.
So getting it cleaner if you wanted to focus more on the food, but otherwise I would encourage more self-care.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I like the going back to basics of things, and I kind of want to piggyback this on the question that was asked before. So first of all, going back to basics, how did we evolve? We evolved being connected to the earth. We'd see the sunrise, we'd see the sunset. We wouldn't be surrounded by artificial lights in an exhibition hall all day for 3 days.
You're welcome.
And we get back to nature. That's a great set point. And thinking about what Sean said, we didn't evolve ketogenic all the time, you know? So it is a bit of metabolic flexibility. You know, I wrote my book, How to Feed a Brain, because it was the nourishment for the neurons. And it's not necessarily ketogenic. It became ketogenic. But at first, moving into things, I don't think everybody needs to be ketogenic. Uh-oh, I'm at a keto conference and I just said that. No, I mean, it's not appropriate for everybody all the time. So, you know, I'm not saying try some sweets, try some like grains or anything of that sort, but like nutrient-dense plant matter that is that is, you know, low net carbs or moderate net carbs. Like, clearly don't go eating grapes or anything or watermelon, but giving yourself that flexibility, and again, experimenting with yourself and seeing how that does, but giving your brain the nutrients it needs. I'd also look into the amount of DHA you're getting. So DHA is a fatty acid, an omega-3 fatty acid, extremely neuroprotective. One of my favorite fatty acids, and just, yeah, look into that. As far as, I don't know how much fish are you having?
Probably once or twice a week.
What's that?
Once or twice a week.
Okay, yeah, up that.
Anyone else? Vanessa?
Sorry, just
Or Sean,
frequency
either
and
one.
frequency and duration of these tremors, like before you started the diet to now, like you're still having tremors, but are they improved?
I did not have tremors when I started the diet. That's my frustration.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
last December, I just noticed that I wasn't able, like if I'm in a hurry, buttoning my shirt.
How old are you?
Part
How old are you?
29.
Yeah. See? I know you're not allowed to ask a lady how old.
69.
69. Okay. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say the healthy fats, especially we have 2 essential fatty acids that we have to get, and ALA and LA, and we have to get those from very specific foods. And the fish, I mean, I have wild sardines every single day. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but you know, if you really want to maximize the impact that you're going to get from doing this kind of therapy with real food, you know, the healthy fats are so important. Our neurons, like you were saying, they're covered with a myelin sheath, and that myelin is a conductor that helps conduct. You know, when we're talking about neurological benefits, the healthy fats are some of the most important aspects. So just wanted to add on to that.
Liz? No.
Yeah, look into methylation too, along the lines of what she's talking about.
Say that again.
Methylation.
What is that?
That's a long, check it out. Google it. But also sulfur-rich vegetables as well. Sulfur-rich, and mushrooms are also in that category. That helps with your vasculature, and you have 400 miles worth of blood vessels in your brain alone.
So the other thing I want to point out is what you just described, these scenarios where you're experiencing the tremors, it seems like you're high stress environment or high stress stuff. So you might.
Just self-inflicted. I mean, you're going to
sorry.
hurry to go to the store or whatever.
It doesn't matter. Stress doesn't care who's inflicting it. It's still as insidious no matter what. So it's high stress that seems to be the cause, or it seems to be correlative, not causative. You thought I was, no, it's correlative, right? But you may have a look at what your cortisol levels are to check that, and you may just need to start chilling out a little bit, maybe. Have you had a high stress thing going on?
Well, I am retired, but I do keep myself pretty busy.
When did you retire?
6 years ago,
Oh, maybe you're tired of being retired.
maybe.
All right, thank you for your question.
Thanks.
Next question.
Hi.
I like your shoes. I just
Thank
want
you.
to point to, yes.
Hey. Then I'm actually from Shanghai, China.
Well, welcome.
So that's like how many miles away? I don't know. Basically, I flew like almost 2 days. That's like 18 hours total. Flew here, just for this KetoCon.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that's across the date line too, so you literally flew back in time.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be sleeping now in China. Basically, I come here to see all those people who are doing keto, and it feels like home, except that at home we speak Chinese. The thing is, I've been doing that for more than 1 year and a half. I've been encouraging people around me to do that. I influenced like more than 30 people directly.
Awesome.
Who have been doing that, and 3 of them actually got rid of their fatty liver.
Awesome.
Thing. And I also started, because I have a day job, which is pretty busy. Like I flew around stuff. I'm a tax guy.
But they let you come here though, so you're good.
I asked for like a week's leave. So, but anyway, I also started the whole WeChat public account. So I have several hundreds followers. I've been keeping writing things. So including this KetoCon. So the question actually arrives on the supplements.
Cell phones?
Supplements.
Supplements, okay.
Supplements. Because I had been doing pretty well since, like I took five months to lose like 20 pounds, 25 pounds. And then I started picking up weight training, only weight training, no cardio stuff like that. And I tried to pick up like 10 pounds already in less than a year of time, of course. Then the thing about supplements, including those pills and whatever electrolytes and those calcium. I'm not sure. Also the protein powders. Should I be like taking them? Because I don't really feel. I mean, I feel something when I eat them, but it doesn't really feel they're helping me.
Okay.
I'm not sure how those guys are.
Is there
taking
anyone
them.
on the panel who is associated with or knowledgeable of supplements in any way?
I am a formulator and a biochemist, and my partner right there is from Nanjing. You guys should talk.
Yeah,
it's close. It's nearby to Shanghai. If people don't know,
everyone's like, why is that
everyone's
relevant?
like, where is that? So as far as taking protein powders, man, this is tough. Like, because all this stuff, like we were talking about, is just so bio-individual. You're a lean person. I bet you're pretty like carb and protein tolerant. It's like I would have to look at everything, like how you're working out, all that kind of stuff. The more lean body mass you have, the more muscle mass you have, the more flexibility you have with both protein and carbs. Like, it's a whole other discussion. But anyway, I think yes, take creatine. Yes, take some berberine to help with body composition, insulin sensitivity. Protein, like it just depends. If you're struggling to get it food-wise, it can be convenient. If you're pretty insulin sensitive, again, I'm thinking you could maybe like time it like a whey protein shake, like if you're going to have one, like post-workout, and then, and then maybe that would be the only time. Maybe 25 grams is enough. Everything's dose dependent too. So that would be my advice. Is there any other supplements you're curious about? Like ketones or those kind of things? Are you using those?
The magnesium, like K2, D3. I see all those advice from the guys I follow on Instagram or YouTube. And also the calcium, I'm not sure whether that helps actually.
Yeah, that's actually really mixed data now. Like we were always told to take all this calcium, and now it might be contributing to calcification of arteries, and if we're not getting enough K2 and D3 in our diet, and some of these other nutrients that come in, these other minerals that are there in bone, because we're not eating bone anymore, and that brings up the whole bone broth and all that stuff. Like so, there's like phosphorus and magnesium and things that should be balanced with your calcium. So I think it's best to eat whole food, but it doesn't hurt to get K2, D3 on top of that. Those are ones that I would recommend.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Liz?
I think something that's so cool about the ketogenic lifestyle is that there isn't some magic pill. You don't need anything other than just whole quality food. So I think that's the best part about it and why it makes it so doable is because we all can do it in different ways, but there's not any special thing needed. So.
Yeah, I think just to echo a lot of these thoughts is they're called supplements for a reason, but the problem is a lot of times people use them as a primary because they think it's some sort of magical formula, and they're just not. So.
Yeah, my philosophy with supplements is just prioritizing the most nutrient-dense foods because your body knows exactly what to do with those nutrients and those micronutrients when it gets them in those forms because it can recognize them. And then with supplements, you can run into even toxicity issues with overdoing them. But if you are getting them from just prioritizing the best quality, most nutrient-dense foods, your body will know exactly what to do with it.
I appreciate that enormously because the supplements I like to use are food-based, like, for example, kelp and dulse and sea vegetables, and for those who aren't into eating organ meats, desiccated organ meat capsules, things of that sort. So it's close to food, as close to food as possible, but packs a punch because a lot of it, like with soil depletion and things of that sort, I've heard a lot about how we don't get the same nutrition in our food that we used to. So that's where supplements come in, but I like to have foods that supply those nutrients.
One last thing, a huge concern is quality of the supplements. I test out a lot of supplements, and I'm not kidding, probably 90% of supplements don't test out for what the label claim is, and then some of them are adulterated. So when you're going to buy supplements, if you're going to use them, and again, it's an N of 1 experiment, right? Make sure you're buying quality stuff, like good brands, like Thorne or Now, or like some real brands that have been around a long time, a good quality control. Don't just go on Amazon and like buy what's cheapest, or Alibaba or whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next question.
Sorry, I'm short. Hi, I'm Rachel. So my question, I'm a nurse. My question stems about histamine intolerance. So I've been keto for 3 years. I've been loving it, but lately in the past year, I've had a lot of symptoms that like multiple doctors just don't really know how to diagnose me and what to do. And one of them is thinking more maybe it's histamine intolerance just stemming from like my food journals and stuff. I read an article by Dr. Georgia Ede that she published a couple years ago that said that the low-carb population is at a higher risk for histamine intolerance developing it, and I was just wondering if any of you had any knowledge base with that, anything I can do to help that or maybe reverse it a little bit, because a lot of keto foods are high in histamine and I react to, so.
So I've done some just tertiary research on some of this, and there is a propensity. I mean, first of all, the research is pretty scarce about that in general. But from just talking to folks, if you find that you are histamine, if you find that there's a possibility of histamine sensitivity or it's causing problems, adjusting the content of the vegetables that you're eating, because I'm assuming that you're not strictly carnivore.
So I hadn't been, but for the past 3 months I have been, and pretty much all my symptoms have resolved completely, except for this weekend, because I did try some stuff and they're back. But
So the histamine symptoms have resolved once you went carnivore?
entirely, yeah.
Okay, so I think you have the answer.
I know. I'm a nurse. I wanted to know about it.
Oh, the reason for it.
Right.
Yeah, because plants are terrible and we shouldn't be eating them. I think that's essentially it. Sorry, no offense.
Real quick, you said low carb, and low carb has no definition, is 40% maybe or less of carbs. Huge difference from keto. That's so frustrating when they get paired together. I'm not like blaming you at all. But like if someone brings up low carb to you, say, well, that's not necessarily keto. I mean, keto is certainly low carbohydrate, but low carb isn't necessarily keto. There can be a massive difference between 5-ish% and 40%. Because some people are 70% carbs as their diet or, whatever.
I mean, it could just very well be that you're sensitive to phytochemicals that are just in plants. So shove them off into the garbage and then eat the meat.
Well, it's the wine and the dairy that I really miss too. I react to that stuff.
I can live without dairy. I'm just saying. Just get the meat. But I'm glad that you're better. I'm glad that your symptoms have gone away. Thank you.
Thank you.
We didn't answer her question. Like, did you notice that? Like, everyone's just like hoping nobody noticed that we didn't actually answer the question. I noticed.
So I'm not keto, but I didn't know the impact that it would have on neurological disorders, and I have Tourette syndrome, and I was wondering if any of you knew how the connection of keto would have on tics or Tourette's.
So I desperately have tried to find some information on this. There's just zero research on it. Tourette's, keto and Tourette's. I wish I had a better answer for you. I'm just going to say, try it, start today, and see how much better you feel. That's all. That's the best advice I can give you.
All right, thank you.
I have a wait.
Oh no, he's talking.
Come on back.
Nope.
So I have a buddy who has Tourette's, and he did a lot of work with mineral balancing. So doing hair testing and seeing the mineral content in his hair, and then balancing that. I believe it's nutritional balancing. I don't know. I'd have to Google that, see what you come up with. I believe Dr. Wilson's protocol might be in there as well. But he completely resolved his Tourette's, unless he goes off the tracks. Check that out.
Thank you.
It could help. It definitely could help. That brain energy gap thing that I was talking about, mitochondrial function, more cellular energy, so it could help.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi guys, Mitch from Canada. My question for the panel is, I struggle with a group that I manage, and the struggle is there is so much addiction when it comes to sugar, and keeping in mind that not everybody keto's the same. For those that are severely addicted to sugar, what is the best advice that I can give them to help wean them off? Because some people can do cold turkey, but let's be honest, the majority of people can't. So what is the best advice to give people like that?
Super hard because everyone's an individual, but also it's not your responsibility to wean them off, right? It's theirs. So you have to, there's a spectrum. If they're dive headfirst into the pool, then encourage them to dive headfirst into the pool. If they're wade in super slow, then encourage them to wade in super slow. It's better to get healthy slowly than never get healthy.
Absolutely.
Is what I'm saying. So anyone?
Well, just that, again, some people do okay cold turkey and some people don't. And it's okay
Closer. Hey,
in the
closer,
beginning.
Closer. Yes, closer.
Okay. It's okay if you need to transition to make keto stuff that tastes like your sugary stuff if it helps you improve. So I'm not a huge fan of keeping those sweet tastes in your life long term if you have sugar addiction, but certainly going from sugar to using Swerve or some other thing like that is a huge improvement. And while that can still stimulate some things, just getting off that keto stuff tastes really good when you make it with really good sweeteners and things like that. So it's okay to substitute if you need to get clean from the actual sugar.
Basically, I was a complete sugar addict when I started keto. So what I did What I did and what I tell people to do is I kind of stuck with the berries, the blueberries and raspberries, and allowed that to be something that I had, and I'd add heavy cream and something else fatty with it. But I literally had to do kind of the cold turkey or just incorporate a little bit of stevia occasionally, but not make it so it's something you're simply replacing one for the other, like Jessica is saying, because that defeats the whole entire purpose. And we could go into the whole thing of how it still triggers everything. So that would be the question to ask a person is, why do they think they need it? Because I tell people the one thing you really don't need is sugar. What is it providing you for your body for fuel? And that's when I talk to people, that's what I talk about. Mm-hmm. What is it in it that you think you must have? And that's where you're talking about the relationship you have with food. If it's making you happy, are you eating because it makes you happy? Are you eating because you feel sad? And that's what I think sugar is.
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple things on that. I come from food addiction and severe sugar addiction where if I hadn't have had those sweeteners available to me, I probably never would have even tried keto. I would have just said, it's too hard, I can't do it. So for me, it helped make those lateral shifts one at a time. In the meantime, I was adding more nutrient density and my palate started gradually shifting to more and more savory until I became stronger emotionally too, doing all of this, that I could get to the point where I switched the diet soda for diet soda, then to, the erythritol soda, and then stevia, and then all the way to just, for me, having no sweeteners now for over 2 years. It's been the easiest thing because I'm an abstainer type. There's also abstainers and moderators. If you tell a moderator they can never have something ever again, they'll just go crazy. They need to know they can always have something. But I think that exactly what you said is so important, is that it's the root and the relationship with food. But keto can help strengthen you and give you more energy and give you just more health in general, so you can actually be more equipped to make the transition completely off it, if that's something that's a goal too.
Just to add to that, I think you have to detox from the sugar before you can even think about figuring out the root. So that's why the two things go together so well. So whether you are substituting or whether you are going cold turkey, most of us could not think clearly enough when we were on carbs and sugar to figure out our mess. So keto helps you do that. So any way that you can do it, whether it's cold turkey or gradually getting off the stuff, it is going to help your mind.
Yeah, that's one of the things I recommend usually before going on keto is lowering the sugar, getting rid of the processed food, because you can just go junk food crazy now, even on any diet. You could be paleo and have all honey and molasses and whatever, and you could be keto and have tons of junk foods and whatever. And of course they're okay sometimes depending, but it's really good to detox, to lower your sugar, to lower these processed, high bliss point, engineered foods, and then jump into keto, and it makes the whole process a lot more seamless.
Kevin?
So yeah, my name's Kevin. I'm also a sugar addict once upon a time. I don't believe once an addict, always an addict, because I'm not anymore. And so it's switching for me meant that my liver actually wasn't ready to start producing ketones. So gradually moving into it, first of all, the sweets in general, Swerve and things of that sort. Sorry, I didn't mean to say a brand name. They're not real food. And that's what saved me, was real food, was switching to real food. So what I advise my clients to do, and what's in my book, is roast fruits and vegetables, or roast vegetables, deeply pigmented and sulfur-rich vegetables, and have those always available. And then you can throw them on greens and eat them. And it's not keto per se, but it moves you in that direction. And when your body's not used to producing the ketones, it's a nice transition to get into. It's like man, when you have those sugar cravings, when you find a real food solution to it, it's awesome.
Liz? Yeah, there we go.
I think the ultimate goal, obviously, is to cure that sugar addiction. So if the transition period is with erythritol or, different things, I think it's, for a lot of people, that makes it doable. And then they realize, oh, I can eat this and I can still enjoy it, because it's different than any other diet because you do have those options. But our goal, obviously, is just to get rid of the sugar addiction. So replacing it long-term with erythritol and all of those things, that's not what we're trying to do here. So we're trying to just cure that same sugar addiction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
I actually have two questions, if that's okay, for two kind of specific people.
Let's go.
Okay, so the first one is for Sean. You mentioned berberine, and I understand the mechanisms behind that. What are your thoughts on berberine versus metformin with regards, not necessarily for anti-aging, because I know that that's talked about, not worrying about B12 or anything like that, but with regards to reducing internal inflammation, even if all inflammatory markers are low due to autoimmune disease?
Berberine has been shown to be like pretty much equivalent to metformin head to head, and especially and that's at like a 500 milligram dose about 3 times a day. And then if you look at the data on either berberine or metformin, like I said, glycation impacts everything. Like when you're elevated in glycation, then it triggers inflammation and oxidation and mitochondrial dysfunction. So when you're having the berberine, you'll see that not only does it lower blood glucose, lower insulin, but it lowers oxidation, it lowers dyslipidemia, it lowers CRP, inflammation. So it's improving like all of these markers associated with aging and biological aging and mitochondrial function. So I'm just a huge fan of berberine in general. Does that answer the question?
Sort of.
Okay.
So part of what I'm asking is, if all the inflammatory markers, hsCRP, fibrinogen, myeloperoxidase, homocysteine, if all of those are low, and say the only thing that's still high is like a TPO antibody, and it's the only thing, and as a result of that, there's gastric motility issues. This is like related to Hashimoto's, for example, and utilizing berberine never made a difference, doesn't make a difference seeing any changes in blood glucose, but then changing over to something like metformin and seeing that as a difference. I was wondering, like, gastric motility change, glucose still stays around the same, antibodies started going down a little bit. So I was just wondering if there's any actual difference in like the mechanistic points of both of those, one being berberine, the other one being, I can't remember the plant that metformin comes from, but the difference in sort of how they work on a biological or physiological level.
Yeah, they are a little different, and there's some other compounds that are similar to berberine that work along that pathway. There isn't enough data for me to answer that. I would say, I answered in my presentation some things that would support autoimmunity, but I think berberine is potentially part of the equation. There are some other compounds that are much harder to find that I could, if you message me, I could send you.
Okay.
Nothing nefarious there, right? There's some other things I could hook you up with.
I was thinking like
Just message
peptides,
me.
if that's what you were thinking about. Okay. All right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Message me.
Okay.
Right, so your second question?
The second question is actually for Vanessa. This is a little bit more of a lighthearted question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So like you just mentioned, for 2 years you've been sweetener free, yet you do put out cookbooks and recipe books. I am a keto baker, and it's one of sort of the side jobs that I do. However, I don't like to take in a lot of those sweeteners. I don't like to eat sweets all the time, but yet I need to make them for my clients. So in terms of recipe developing, in terms of making recipes and things like that, how are you able to do that, but also, for example, right now, like live a carnivore lifestyle, which is pretty much what I do at this point, but I also need to be able to taste things and in order to ensure quality for my clients. So I was wondering sort of like, do you spit it out? Like, what do you do to figure that out?
So because there are so many different, we were talking about the community, how everyone's kind of doing their own thing and what works for them. With every recipe, I provide different levels. So I have the regular recipe, and then I have it sweetener free. Like I have, okay, you can make this cheesecake carnivore if you make it sweetener free, and you can either have it crustless or you can even make a crust with pork rinds. So just providing those options. So there's something for everyone, or you could make it like this, with coconut butter if you're making it dairy free, and just providing all those options so whoever can choose how they want to do it, if they want to sweeten it or not, or have it without. For recipe development, myself, I just kind of, I think, know what certain amounts will make things sweet from doing it for so long now.
So you just more or less guess.
I have a taste tester right here for the sweet things.
Okay.
My husband, he helps me taste. And I know he's very sensitive to sweeteners. He doesn't like the taste. So if he likes it, then I know that people who are like more keto and like those sweeteners will love it. So yeah, he's really helpful.
So some of the other folks that I've talked to who do very similar things and also don't eat sweeteners, they have a really close-knit group of friends. And the reason they're close-knit is because they bake kind of stuff that the friends really, really like to eat. So if you get one person whose opinion you trust, that's fantastic. But if you get
I have my kids.
Sorry?
My kids are very big taste testers.
Sure. Or you get, 5 friends and have them try it, and 4 of them love it. One of them's lukewarm about it. At least you're on your way there, and you don't have to taste a thing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Next question, please.
I don't really have a question. I just want to say that I have learned so much this weekend. It's my first KetoCon.
Thank you.
I have been keto for almost 2 years. I've lost 68 pounds.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
And just from yesterday to today, I learned I can fast. Before, I told, no, I can't do that. I need to eat, and I would physically feel like I was getting sick after just 20 hours. I didn't eat anything because a lot of the stuff out here I can't have with the almond flour and the nut flours and things like that. So I was very picky and choosy, and I looked at the clock and it was like 2 o'clock, and I'm like, I haven't eaten and I'm not hungry. So keeping myself busy doing things, because at home I'm always snacking, which is just not something I should be doing. But when you have 3-year-old twins at home, they're always snacking. So now I know I can do this. And so I just wanted to say thank you all.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next question, please.
I got to move it up. Hi, I'm Tanya from Golden, Colorado.
Hi,
Go
Tammy.
Broncos.
Go Broncos.
You're from Colorado too?
He's from Boulder.
Oh, we're neighbors. I have a question. Matter of fact, I loved your answer about the sweets and everything. I have the same problem. I have a potato chip problem. I can't only eat one. I have to eat the whole bag in one setting. Now, my question is, I have a problem with fasting. Kind of nervous. I was an anorexic for a long time when I was in my 20s. And when I fast, I have this with the therapy that I went through. I had to eat, and I had to tell myself for so long that eating is going to keep me alive. Well, you can see it's kept me alive and overweight. So how do I deal with that mentality of saying it's okay to fast for a day or something? I'm not going to die.
You may not be ready for it. Not everyone should fast, especially if you have a history of anorexia. I do have a history of anorexia in my 20s. My weight range, like when I started keto, I was 309, but at one point I was 115. So
Right.
the whole gamut of eating disorders. But if you're not actively in recovery, and that means not just not participating in the behavior, but having gone through cognitive behavioral therapy, you probably shouldn't fast. But for me, I actually found that fasting's really good for me. But I don't think I could have done it early on. I don't think I could have done that. I've gotten to the point where I say, if any internal message that I have that I've played over and over for years, like I have to eat to live, I have to eat to live, I have to. If it doesn't serve you well anymore for the person you are today, replace that tape, because there are things that got you through, right? I mean, you lived, you made it. There are things that you played over and over and over and it got you through, but you're an entirely different person now. You don't have to do that anymore. And sometimes I will literally, like I hear an old message play and I will say out loud, I don't do that anymore.
Right.
And so instead replace it with the message of, you know, if your goal is at some point to be able to fast because you understand the health benefits of that, replace that message. When you hear that message, speak a new message out loud.
Okay.
And so it's never too late to replace that message to yourself. You don't have to keep believing a lie.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to second that entirely. What you don't want for yourself, don't say to yourself. The voice inside our heads, and we've talked a bit about mindset and choosing where we place our attention, honestly. That's what grows neurons. That's what feeds the neurons in our brains to the axons, the synapses. All of it stems from our attention. So analogy I use is our thoughts, your brain is your garden. You have 86 billion plants in your garden because you have 86 billion neurons in your brain. Your thoughts are like the seeds, and your attention to those thoughts, that's the sunlight and water. And ask anybody who understands neuroplasticity, those thoughts you give your attention to, they grow. Those pathways grow, they get stronger. And we all have weeds in our garden. And I don't even need to explain what weeds are. We know what weeds are. And it's not like we can reach in and pull the weeds. It doesn't work that way. But what we can do is we can give our attention to the thoughts we want to grow, to the plants we want to grow, to the flowers we want to grow. And I am not saying, like, ignore the weeds, don't look at those. Like, if you do that, they'll overtake your garden. But what I am saying is they don't need to be the focus of your attention. Okay. And, I mean, you can change your mindset and you can change your life enormously.
Okay. And I have another question. One more. Sorry. When I go on keto, I'm good for maybe, I did it for a month. And the reason why I got off in it, I get these terrible migraines. And I don't know if it's that I'm addicted to carbs. I don't know if it's that I'm addicted to sugar. I'm a chocoholic on also chipaholic. So what do I do when
I'm just going to go on record and say
migraines?
No, it's not because you're a chocoholic or a chipaholic. No, it's not. Anybody want to second? Electrolytes is probably the first thing that you need to be paying attention to.
Okay.
Electrolytes and supporting the mitochondria, absolutely. Forget her name. There she is. Yeah, what's your name again? Lucretia. Talk to her. She's brilliant, and she is a migrainer, which I found out today is an actual noun.
BHB is shown to improve, raising your ketone levels does improve migraines. Also lysine, one of the things I mentioned that helps with the immune system. It's one of the ketogenic amino acids, along with leucine, helps with migraines. So that's something to look at as well.
Okay.
I just wanted to say one thing I think is really important for people to remember. It's one of my favorite things about keto is it's a fasting mimicking diet. So there's no need to actually fast or push yourself to do extended fasting because you're activating a lot of the same biochemical pathways as you are in fasting. Okay. So if it's not something you enjoy or you want to push yourself to do, you don't have to. You're getting so many of those benefits just from the carbohydrate restriction already. And then, if you're maybe not snacking so much between meals because you're eating really nutrient-dense, nourishing meals, then you have like a time-restricted eating window and you fast daily, then you're going to get so many benefits from that. And you don't have to do 24-hour, 48-hour, 30, 72-hour fasts or longer. Those are just for people who enjoy that, and it's something that comes organically, I think, just from doing keto for a while. So.
Okay.
So we need to get to the last question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, Jessica.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful for the last question. Hi, I'm Brenda. I have to lower it. I'm short. Hopefully this question helps other people too. I've got a long list of things just found out about. Candida, MTHFR, woohoo, great. I have all these horrible things. High toxic metals, chronic hives for a year. So I am working with a functional doctor. My question is for those of you who do carnivore and fast. I'm wondering if I'm seeking, obviously, autophagy for the detox piece of it. And I can happily fast for 24, 48 hours, but I can't get rid of my coffee. And I was happily putting collagen in it, but then I read somewhere that I'm breaking my fast if I have bone broth or collagen in the coffee.
Okay, so can we stop being militant about, will this break my fast? Is this gonna break my fast? If you feel better with it, take it.
What about the benefits, though? Will I still receive the same?
There's huge benefits to adding collagen to your coffee. Tremendous benefits. Now, are you asking?
Autophagy doesn't work like that. It's not just
Okay.
like on or off. It's not like people do that with muscle protein synthesis, like it's on or off. Exercise is triggering autophagy.
Oh, yeah, that's
keto.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't work like that.
Okay, what about adding
even if you're kicked out for a period of time, you're back in
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
What's your question?
I can enjoy it black, but I like it with unsweetened almond milk. Is that still something that I should be avoiding because
Quit
I want?
worrying about whether or not your coffee's breaking your fast.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for sticking around. Our stories panel.